Celebrating 49 years on the air, award-winning Farm Week is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Today on Farm Week, a trade roundup, some big-time shifts in who's talking to who. In Southern gardening, definitely not a figment of your imagination, Eddie Smith explains. In the markets, a cattle and beef update, no surprise, price is still up, but so is demand. And in our feature, one last chance to meet Mississippi's reigning tree farmer of the year. Farm Week starts right now.
Hello everybody, I'm Zach Ashmore.
And I'm Mike Russell. So good to have you back with us here on Farm Week. Much, as you likely know, is happening in global trade and security, some with and some without the United States. Perhaps, as we said at the top of this show, nothing has gained greater scrutiny than just who is aligning with who, namely China, Russia, North Korea, and even India. And that could potentially affect every ag sector here in Mississippi. David Miller has more.
The world economy is working through several trade pattern changes and partnerships. At a tech show in Germany this week, tariffs were on the minds of exhibitors looking for new markets and planning for existing ones, including in places they already have manufacturing operations.
The thing about tariffs is it changes more or less every day. But of course, if tariffs were to come, we have to increase prices, of course, and the customer has to pay the tariffs in the end.
Many companies with displays around food and AI have already expanded into the countries where they have factories, hedging their bets on policy changes.
We have 40 factories worldwide, and we do have a local-for-local strategy. So what we produce in China is mainly for the Asian market, and the American market, we serve it mainly from our American and Mexican factory. So that is why it's not that much affecting us.
India and its 1.4 billion people is seen as a market of opportunity for the United States. This week, it was China hosting the Indian Prime Minister in an effort to rebuild ties between the two countries. The meeting was ahead of a regional summit. Leaders from North Korea and Russia were also in Beijing, and the session was seen by some analysts as an act of defiance towards the United States and its allies. Ukraine is also part of the equation between all of these countries, as is the oil purchase by India from Russia. President Trump has announced a 50% tariff on India for its purchase of Russian oil. According to Trump's trade advisor, Peter Navarro, India's purchases of Russian oil only started after the invasion of Ukraine, making the Asian powerhouse an enabler of that war.
India charges the highest tariffs in the world, has the highest non-tariff barriers. So they export a bunch of stuff to us. We can't export to them. Our workers and our businesses get hammered by India. India then uses the money we give them, buying their exports, to buy Russian oil.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio arrived in Mexico this week in an effort to work out trade, migration, and border security issues. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum hosted the event aimed at collaboration on security matters. Regardless of the outcomes in all of these negotiations, uncertainty in trade has been tough for agriculture and business in general.
If you're putting trade restrictions to be more competitive, then if the countries respond to that and are more competitive, then that's a good goal and they meet that, but then you're not raising revenue because then the revenue goes because you take the tariffs off.
On the lighter side, this week in our Southern Gardening segment, Eddie Smith heads to Meridian, Mississippi. There, an old Southern favorite awaits, the fig tree. A word of advice, though, you may have to compete with the squirrels. Here's Eddie.
Today on Southern Gardening, we're in Meridian, Mississippi, visiting Wanda McBride. whose backyard fig tree is nothing short of a treasure. This impressive tree provides a bountiful crop of large golden figs each year. Wanda's fig tree is the star of her garden, being reliably productive and beautifully shaped. The fruit is substantial in size, with a golden bronze skin that blushes slightly when fully ripe. When you split one open, you'll find a rich amber-colored flesh with a sweet honey-like flavor. It's perfect for eating fresh, making preserves, or even baking into cakes and cookies. Figs thrive in warm southern climates and love full sun and well-drained soil. This tree gets at least 6 hours of sunlight a day, which helps it produce such sweet and abundant fruit. One thing to watch out for during fig season is competition from birds, squirrels, and raccoons. Wanda has had great success using lightweight garden netting to protect her crop. Using bird netting can make all the difference if you're trying to preserve your harvest. Just be sure it's loose enough to allow air circulation, but tight enough to prevent small animals from getting tangled or sneaking underneath. Whether you're a seasoned gardener or just getting started, a fig tree like Wanda's can be a rewarding addition to your landscape. For more information about figs and recommended varieties, visit our website at extension.msstate.edu. I'm Eddie Smith. I will see you next time on Southern Gardening.
We'll take a quick break, but stick around. Coming up, one more chance to meet the 2024 Tree Farmer of the Year. He's well known across the nation, but he's also one of the most humble and hardworking men in the profession, despite a body of experience that puts him at the very top. He's a third-generation forester and manages 60,000 acres. To say that he truly knows the timber industry is an understatement. The 2024 Tree Farmer of the Year, coming up on Farm Week. Don't go away.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations and their faith. I believe in my own work and in the opportunity I have to make my life useful to humanity. I believe that education is a lifelong process, and the greatest university is the home. That my success as a teacher is proportional to those qualities of mind and spirit that give me welcome entrance to the homes of the families that I serve. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations and their faith. I believe that education, of which extension work is an essential part, is basic in stimulating individual initiative, self-determination, and leadership. I believe that these are the keys to democracy, and that people, when given facts they understand, will act not only in their self-interest, but also in the interest of society. I believe in intellectual freedom to search for and present the truth without bias and with courteous tolerance towards the views of others. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
Time for the market report. Looked like prices took another dive.
That they did, Mike. Seems we can't get a consistent rally, especially in row crops, while cattle still going strong. We'll talk about both, but first, the numbers. What were the week's biggest gains and losses? And then in our row report, what's making row crop markets move? An expert weighs in. And finally, more cattle market talk with Dr. Josh Maples. So, markets closed on the downswing, all commodities affected save for one. Let's take a look. The week's only gain, lean hogs, up about 1 cent. That's more than a 1% increase from the previous week. The week's biggest loss, sugar, down nearly a cent, a 5% decrease from the previous week. Okay, so this week on our Row Report, we continue to talk about how and why prices are falling and just can't seem to find a real rally to push them upward despite the U.S. having competitive prices. Analyst Chris Robinson says it seems farmers are going to store the crops and wait out the prices for a rally, at least those that haven't already been sold.
I think farmers are going to do that. Typically, they like to store corn, and they typically will sell the beans off the combine. And as far as wheat, they'll sell what they need to sell and wait. I mean, you go back, wheat especially has always been a difficult market to trade and or hedge. Corn, I think that's probably where the biggest risk is financially for the whole country. When you look at, where are farmers exposed to price risk? It's in corn. Everybody really needs, the high of the year was 479. Are we going to get back there? I don't know. This is going to be the first time in a long time where we might not get back to those spring insurance prices, which was 470. So I'm hopeful, but I'm not blindingly hopeful. Hope's. It's always nice to be hopeful. If we're lucky, in my opinion, we may get one more chance. There's a gap back in the July 4th weekend where we were making highs. We gap lower. It comes in around 434, 435. That's going to be the big test. If we can get these guys to push us up there, you may see some more fun short covering. They bought 35,000 last week, so they were only short 110. It feels to me like they probably bought another 15 or 20 this week. We'll know when they get the data today. And at this point, if I'm long corn, if I'm a farmer, everybody that's watching this, you've got to hope that those guys start to feel a little bit of heat and cover some of those positions. It may give us one more blip up. And all I can say is if we get there, you got to be ready to do something.
Moving on to cattle, we also continue discussions of both our state and national herds with Dr. Josh Maples. As we already know, price is at a historic high and beef has come along for the ride. How long can we expect this? According to Dr. Maples, quite a while, and it may be even longer if the New World screwworm finds its way up here.
Yeah, it's a really great time to have cattle, or to have cattle to sell. It's a tough time if you're trying to buy cattle right now. And so, this time of year, Zach, is whenever a lot of producers are selling their spring-born calves. August through October really is when a lot of producers are weaning and selling their calves. So we're seeing the highest revenue for calves that we've ever seen. A really strong year for cattle producers. Now, for producers who are trying to purchase calves, either as stockers or maybe even purchase replacements for their operations, they're facing the highest prices ever for those new animals. So we don't have any clear data right now that would suggest to me, hey, we're obviously expanding this cow herd. What you look for on things like that are we seeing significantly fewer heifers being sold as feeder cattle? That would tell you they're staying back on the farm or on the ranch to be cows next year. Are we seeing significantly lower beef cow slaughter? Now, we are seeing lower beef cow slaughter, which would suggest we're not culling as deeply as we have been. I would call the evidence mixed at this point. We might be at the very, very, very start, but there's just not enough data out there to suggest that we are broadly expanding this herd. If I have to project forward, I think we're going to be mostly level this year in terms of compared to where we were at January 1 of the start of the year. I think we'll be pretty similar to that number by the end of this year, which would be significant because it'd be the first year that we didn't see a drop in beef cows. But it's certainly, I don't expect us to see more beef cows and not a lot more beef cows by January. New World screwworm, the biggest impact directly right now. Now, if we're ever dealing with this in the U.S., actually have cases in the U.S., that will be the biggest impact. But for right now, the biggest impact is that we have closed the border for live animals coming in from Mexico. That's been a big impact, especially localized. A lot of those cattle would stay in the kind of really south U.S., so think feedlots in Texas, and I do think that has certainly tightened supplies even further. We already have really tight supplies domestically, and then we stopped bringing in some of those, and so that tightened it even more. I think that's boosted our prices, certainly locally in the South anyway. So right now, I think that's the biggest impact, and there's no clear signal of when those might resume. There were efforts to try to resume that back in July, but they didn't work because screwworm continues to move north in Mexico. So that's kind of where we are right now, just hoping that we don't get it here, because again, if we get it here, that is a much bigger deal than what we're currently seeing.
And that's it for a deeper look into the markets. Seems row crops can't find a rally while livestock can't really stop theirs. That is, until demand changes. Mike?
Thanks, Zach. Before long, we'll announce the 2025 Mississippi Tree Farmer of the Year. But first, one more chance to meet the reigning winner. He's a Mississippi State grad with a long personal history in the timber business. And trust me, we could talk about him for hours. But see for yourself. Meet David Hall.
It's truly an honor. Very excited to be selected and put into a real elite group of folks that have been honored over the years.
If you know David Hall, and he is well known across the state and the nation for that matter, you're not surprised by his comment. He is, after all, one of the most humble and hardworking men in the profession. Despite a management record and a body of experience, education, and professional knowledge that put him at the very top. An MBA graduate from Mississippi State University, he's the president of Hall Tree Incorporated in Meridian. It owns and manages about 60,000 acres. He's a third-generation forester, a member of just about every forestry group imaginable, and he's a former president of the MFA, the Mississippi Forestry Association. So to say that he truly knows the timber industry and is perhaps the perfect choice for the 2024 Mississippi Tree Farmer of the Year is not only accurate, it's practically an understatement. The man who nominated him should know.
How he does everything he does, it just amazes me. When you think about how many people in this world have a tremendous effect in so many areas in Mississippi, making everybody's life so much better, David comes to the top of the list, and there's not many people that can do all the things he's done in the state of Mississippi and all the great things. So, I mean, I'm proud that we got to nominate him, and he won. This is a great honor for him, and I'm glad he won. He definitely deserves it.
He's one of those members that you wish you could replicate and have several of them, because what he does for our association and what he does for the industry is very vital, and we need more landowners like him that are willing to put in the time and the effort and are willing to educate others and bring people in to appreciate the beauty of his property.
David's corporation has a relationship with Scotch Plywood Company that goes back many decades. In fact, these days, at any given time, Scotch has 3 or 4 crews actively working David's land, carefully managing a prescribed burn program on 3,000 to 5,000 acres a year, conducting thinnings and clear cuts, and obviously more. Scotch is based in Fulton, Alabama, but Forester Bracy Clark works out of the Waynesboro, Mississippi office. Like most, he's routinely impressed with David.
I think a lot of it is he kind of dives into it every day. So like I said, he serves on the boards, and so he is around the inner workings of the forestry industry in Mississippi. Our Scotch employees, we're on the ground, managing the land, dealing with loggers, doing the burning and all that. But there's a whole other side to it that we don't see, and that's in the board meetings, in Congress, and stuff like that David knows a lot about. I just think all of his experience on both sides, on the ground, in the office, in the boardrooms, kind of gives him overall just a great knowledge about the business.
Scotch manages a 43-year rotation, longer than the typical tree farm. But there's no question the teamwork between David and Bracy is centered around making the property far more enjoyable and producing revenue.
His overall management goal, even if he was doing something different, right? I mean, even if he was just doing a regular, shorter 25 to 30-year-old sawtimber rotation, his goal just meets the four aspects of tree farm, or the 4 pillars of tree farm, which is woods, wildlife, water, quality, and recreation. I mean, that's how he sees his management, and I think that's what it takes.
There's also no question that a great deal of thought goes into the management of Haltree's land. It always has, says David. In other words, it's all about being one thing, intentional.
You have to be very intentional and think well ahead of time of 10, 20, 30 years down the road. Your trees we're planting now, we're not going to harvest until they're probably 45 years old. We'll have a lot of activities, management activities along the way, just like a row crop farmer would with fertilizing or spraying invasive species or whatever. We've got a lot of the same things we're going to do along the way, just on a much longer time frame.
David led us on a tour of his property. Here, a 25-year-old loblolly pine plantation planted actually before the property was purchased. It's burned frequently, at least every other year. The vegetation is relatively low, but it's high-quality forage for deer, turkey, and quail. David says this kind of management has been beneficial for timber growth, producing good diameter and height growth on all the trees. Here, an example of contrast. On one side of the road, a 4-year-old pine plantation in an area that had been high-graded by the previous owner. David says he let the area sit for 18 years until the timber was big enough to harvest before conversion. Across the road, a 14-year-old pine plantation that's just been first thinned, just after a burn. Blue paint indicates trees left behind for better stalking afterward. In this area, a recent harvest in a mixed stand of pine and hardwood about 40 years old that had also been high-graded. It finally grew big enough for harvest and conversion. Soon, David says, an aerial application of herbicide will kill anything that sprouted back. That, followed by a burn, will be followed by further plantings of seedlings. Adjacent to it, a large pipeline used for seasonal wildlife food plots. He says it's a popular place for hunters and other recreational users. And here, an interesting mix of food plots, a variety for wildlife, a mixture of soybeans and cowpeas. On the perimeter, all the way around the field, another mixture that's graze tolerant and high in protein. David says the area has had a big impact on the quality and health of the animals that graze here. In this area, a footbridge over a creek built originally to access a food plot for hunting and improved over the years to make it safer and provide better access to a hiking trail. Scout troops occasionally use the trail for badge requirements, and David sometimes makes maps for their navigation. And finally, an area that was originally 80 acres of cattle pasture. The pond, first used by cattle for cooling, was widened and deepened. Now it's large enough for a sizable fish population. Around the pond, cypress trees were planted, along with a mixture of different oak trees to add some visual variety. David's always looking for ways to improve the land and be responsible from an environmental perspective.
I think a lot of it's just the emotional attachment to the land, growing up, being outdoors, hunting, fishing, and just wanted to be outdoors with my family. You build that passion inside you, and always looking for more, looking for what else can I do to make the property better, what can we do to improve it for timber, for wildlife, for this family recreation. So it's just this becomes a passion growing up around it.
As he looks out over a peaceful 100-acre lake, it's obvious David Hall is lifted by its beauty. As he anticipates the sunset that will come later, what does he think?
Blessed, very happy. This is one of my favorite places in the world to watch the sunset. We've got a great view here over the lake. Just truly honored and blessed to be able to have this property, manage it, and have the family that allows me to take some latitude in the ways we do some of our management here. Just a beautiful place, and really enjoy being here and having my family here as well.
Congratulations once again to David Hall of Meridian, Mississippi, the 2024 Tree Farmer of the Year. Well, next week, she spoke when the USDA's Brooke Rollins recently addressed the crowd at Mississippi State.
And here's why. Veterinarian Kim Plunk expected stress when she started practicing a few years ago, but long hours and money pressure take a big toll on your mental health.
How do you cope, especially when rural areas just don't have enough mental health resources? The story of Kim Plunk and so many others next time on Farm Week. Before we go, a lot of 4-H'ers raise goats, and many of those goats have their own personalities.
In Wisconsin, a goat's googly-eyed expression won over the internet when a small zoo posted a picture of Joe the goat. Emerson Lehman has the story.
It could be the GOAT of Kodak moments. We're talking the greatest zoo picture of all time, featuring an actual goat.
One very special, very handsome and adorable little goat named Joe.
Joe is his name, blowing up social media, his claim to fame.
We're currently at about 4.4 million views for that post alone.
After sharing this memorable googly-eyed snapshot on the New Zoo's Facebook page,
and it just exploded.
Angela Koski knew she had a winner.
It has been so much fun to see the comments and the shares.
So she decided to keep the fun going.
Everybody kept commenting that it was an instant meme, like Joe had to be a meme.
Exhibit A, practicing for my driver's license photo versus taking my actual driver's license photo. Or for you married couples out there, the only photo my husband takes of me on family vacation.
Who hasn't had a bad picture? We've all felt like Joe a time or two in the past, so I think people really resonated with that.
Despite his newfound fame, zoo officials tell me Joe's not letting the attention go to his head.
Joe is one of our silliest goats. We've definitely had a few people come out and ask about him.
And he'll even still pose for a pic.
You know, my goats are pretty funny animals. Remember, if you missed a story, look for past episodes of Farm Week on our website at farmweek.tv.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. See you next week. Thanks for watching.